Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of Connersville, and more especially of Fayette County. Tonight we have the honor of having the Connersville Police Department, the chief and one of the captains with us. It was our plan to have the fire chief with us. That was what we planned for the last several weeks. He's on an active fire up on 7th Street right now. I just talked with him and he didn't think he was going to be able to make it. They've got an investigation going on up there. Been real busy with fires here just lately. So tonight we will go with what we got. Not that that's not important, because it is. This program was planned tonight that we could tell you folks exactly what's going on in the police and fire department. Police and fire are called public safety, and it's become increasingly hard to pay public safety because of our loss of revenue. And I've gone over that loss of revenue and over it and over it, and I know you're tired of hearing it, but I'm going to say one more time that when we lost the Vistion plant in 2007, before I ever took office, we lost $100 million in assessed value, and the tax rate up in that township is almost $6. So you can see that that was a tremendous loss. The very next year, the state of Indiana put the tax caps on and said that we can only tax residential property up to 1% of the assessed value. Now that was supposed to be a great thing. That was going to just work perfect in every town and every community, because over the last 10, 20 years, all property values had been climbing. But what happened was, after we lost Vistion and several other companies in Connersville, the assessed value of our properties began to decline because we're trending on the sales in a particular area, and we lost value. All of you have, in the last few weeks, been receiving your assessed value of your property. If you own your property, you've got a Form 11 in the last few weeks. A lot of people don't pay attention to it, but if you look at it, it'll tell you on the left side what last year's assessment was and what your new assessment is. That's what your 2015 payable in 16 tax is going to be, depending on what township you live in. So I ask every one of you, look at it. I have been talking to many, many people around the city, and most everybody is telling me their property in assessed value. Now this only means for tax purposes, has nothing to do with you selling it. For tax purposes, has declined somewhat. I just looked at mine and it was down $14,000 from what last year. We have nothing to do with it. The owner has nothing to do with it. It's the assessor and the assessor's office that sets that value. The first is on land, and the second on structures, and then they have a total. And if you read that, on one side it'll say previous and your present. So I encourage you to look at that, and you'll kind of understand how that's going down. Now, that money, about 59% of it, goes to the city. When that tax value is assessed at $5 or $6, whatever the rate is, or maybe out in the townships, it's a lot less, maybe $3. About 59% of that money goes to the city, and that goes into the general fund. The general fund is the fund we use to pay police and fire. Police and fire are very important, and over the last 8 years, I can tell you it has become more important, because we depend on the police department 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to keep us safe. And if you read your paper, you certainly can tell that America has gotten meaner. Watch television and see all the shootings that go on. Watch Channel 8 or any of the Indianapolis channels or the Cincinnati channel. Almost every night there's 1 or 2 shootings in those cities. Luckily, we're not having that. But we've got drugs, we've got all kinds of domestic problems, we've got things that are going on, and the police have to keep all that cleared up all night long, all day long, plus do all their paperwork, get ready to go to court, and all the things they do. Then they're expected to go out and watch for properties that the people didn't cut their grass, watch for people that park on the wrong side of the road, watch for people that park in the wrong zone. Well, that all sounds good, but when you take 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and with only 24 police officers now at Connersville Police Department, it's very difficult to get it. And tonight we're going to talk with Police Chief Counselor, who has many, many years on the police department. He'll retire with me in just a couple of months. And Robbie Fee, who is a captain on the Connersville Police Department. And captain means he runs the shift when he's working, he's in charge. Been there 19 years, 11 months, just another month he'll have 20 years in. Both very distinguished police officers, very honest, and they're out on the street for your benefit. So we'll not talk to a fireman or a fire chief tonight. I was hoping we could, and maybe I can plan a special meeting because I'd like for you to hear from them and see what they do also. So, Chief Counselor, we appreciate you coming tonight. How many years do you have on there?
I have 35 on and working on 35 and a half.
Yeah. Let me explain first. Everybody knows the Chief Counselor retired in July 1st, and we were short on police officers, and I allowed him to come back and serve as chief for the last 3 or 4 months that I'm in there, because I didn't want to have to put a chief in and then the new administration would have to change it again. So we took him back after he took 30 days off, and we took him back. We saved a lot of money. We don't have to pay any vacation. We don't have to pay any uniform. We don't have to pay any longevity.
Insurance.
No insurance on him. We saved money, and it put another officer on the street, and he'll just retire with me, and when the new administration comes in, they'll pick their department heads, and we'll move down the road. It's going to work. Robbie Fee has been there, as I told you, 19 years and 11 months. And Robbie, tell us when you first started.
I started in October of 1995.
Okay, and how were things then? How did it compare to today? How were things in 95?
The town had its fair share of problems, but it as time has went on, in my 20 years, I've seen a lot of changes in the community itself. The crime has changed, the type of crime has changed, but that also changes with technology and stuff like that. We start seeing different things with it. Other than that, I think the community as a whole is a great community. We have a great core, a great group of people in this community that every day is out here doing what they're supposed to do. It's just a shame that we have a small percentage that you know, we as the police officers, that's who we see every day. But other than that, most of the people we see in this community, we see in passing, we see on a daily basis, and it's just a hi, how are you? You know, they're just going back and forth to work or taking their kids to school and everything.
Yeah. You know, at the 911 service last week, Joey Laughlin spoke, the sheriff of Fayette County, and he said that he feels he has the best working relationship he has ever had in the last 5 years with the Connersville Police Department and the Fayette County Sheriff's Department, the state police, and other police agencies. Would you say he's correct?
Oh, I would say very much correct. When I first hired on, you know, there was a little bit of separation there between the departments, but here recently it has really grown. You know, state police are always there, the county's always there, we're there for them. You know, with the smaller we've gotten and the smaller they've gotten, we've had to combine with each other to be able to work together and make sure we're safe and the public's safe out there.
Right. Many times during the night, our police department goes out and helps a deputy that needs help, and by the same token, the deputies come in and help us. Let's start out. What do you think as a captain? You're on the street. You spend 40 hours a week at least out there on the street, and sometimes more. And I think you do the second shift, don't you?
Third shift, sir.
Third shift.
Yes.
Okay. What is our biggest problem today?
I think our biggest problem, you mean crime-wise or
Yeah.
crime-wise? We see probably more, I would say, drinking offenses and then altercations or domestic or fights and stuff like that. That's probably the majority of the calls that we respond to right now.
Do you ever get through a shift without having some of that?
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes we do.
But I listen to you many times, and it just seems like you just run from one side of town to the other, here and there, and sometimes you're backed up 3 or 4 calls.
It does get times like that. Second shift is a little bit more, they run back and forth a lot more. Of course, there's more people out during that time.
You've worked that shift lots of times.
Yes, sir, for many years.
Yeah, so you know what it's like.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you say that crime has changed, or your problems have changed. What were the problems back 20 years ago?
I mean, they were similar, but we're seeing a lot more with internet crimes are popular, scams. We get a lot of calls on phone scams and stuff now, or things, because that's more popular. Over my 20 years, I've seen the drug of choice change multiple times. In the mid 90s, we had a heroin problem in Fayette County, a big heroin problem. It subsided and went to more of a prescription problem, which is nationwide. It did that. And then we started seeing meth come into town, which we saw that come across the country. And then now we're back to the heroin. And I think it's just because it's easily accessible and cheap. And for those people that, the federal laws have changed on prescription drugs, so those people can't get that. So now they've changed what they go to.
It was interesting last night. I watched the Republican debate. They had 11 candidates up there, and they spent a lot of time on the drug problem across the whole United States. So it's not just Connersville.
No, sir. It is a nationwide epidemic that police, people, the public, everybody has to deal with.
Costs millions of dollars to deal with it.
Millions and millions of dollars, yes.
Okay. And I know they expect us to put everybody that does drugs in jail. If you did that, you can't build a jail big enough, can you?
No, sir.
So do you believe that we need to start reforming people or changing people? Or?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely need more programs out there for the public, for these people, for their families that are dealing with this situation, support systems. I know we've got a few, the House of Ruth here in town, and there's a few other that we're seeing starting to pop up that are dealing with that. So I think that's a big thing that needs to be looked into, because not everybody going to prison or jail is the solution for them. It can be more that they need to get out here into a program and they just need help, and they don't know who to go ask for help sometimes.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears here. And just today there was an article in the paper that we aren't responding fast enough to cutting grass. And Chief Counselor, I want you to explain to the people why we can't, the minute we're told that there's long grass in place, or the minute we see it, why we can't just run out there and cut it. Would you explain the state law how we have to handle it?
Sure. It's like when we get a complaint or we see a yard that's or a property that's pretty high on weeds and grass. Or if it's falling apart, it's like a health hazard. We'll get a hold of. What we do is we have to find out who the owner is, and whether it's an individual who owns the house, or if it's a bank or some kind of financial institution that owns the house. And then we after we find that out, we have to send letters out. And they have 10 days to respond to these letters, or certified letters, and we have to get a letter back. And if we don't get the letter back stating that they're going to take care of the situation, or they do send it back, telling us what their status is or whatever, then the city will go out and then mow the grass, or cut the weeds, or board up a house or something like this. And when we do so, they'll be charged either by a bill being sent to them, or put a lien on the property. The city can put a lien on the property. So when it does go sale, they'll have to take care of some liens that they accumulated through times of not taking care of their properties. And so that keeps us pretty busy. Dennis and I, that's probably half our job anymore in the chief's office. It's always been out of the chief's office, but we used to have an officer who did that, and he retired. And so since we're cutting the budget, myself and Dennis take care of all the properties now. So it takes time. It could take anywhere from 10 to 20, sometimes 30 days to get something cut, and we just can't run out and cut it until all the paperwork has been went through and filed and returned and everything else. And that's basically how that comes about.
Robbie, and when you patrol, is the town worse or better than it was? Do you see as many miskept properties, or do you think it's improving?
I think slowly over time it's improving. I think there for a while the town kind of got into a little, I wouldn't say depression type state, but people just didn't have the pride that we used to have. But overall, I see a lot of people going out, fixing up their properties, cleaning up their properties. Maybe if they see a house empty next door, they're trying to mow it and maintain it. A lot of problems I hear from people where they don't like to go mow somebody else's property or an empty house is because of the liability of it. They don't want to go over and do something and then be blamed for it. I think if they had the opportunity, or if they could, some people would be willing to mow some of these empty or abandoned houses, properties, just because it sits next to them and they want to make sure that their neighborhood stays clean too.
Yeah. Anyway, the point I guess I wanted to make tonight is you wouldn't think of a police officer having to worry about grass and all this. And like you said, we had an enforcement officer for years and years and years. We had the privilege of having that, and they took care of that, and they went out and looked after all that stuff. We also, the enforcement officer would go down and take care of the stoplights and take care of the painting of the street, direct that and all that. None of that is done by an extra man or woman today. It's all done on the police department. After you make your arrest, Robbie, you make your arrest, tell us about the paperwork you got to put up with, just to be sure that you're clear and that the city's clear and we don't get more lawsuits than we're getting.
Depending on what type of arrest you make, if it's a DUI arrest, you have your PC affidavit for your DUI, then you have your PC affidavit for your arrest, your daily report, which would be your narrative, any citations, tickets that have to be filled out and written, and then all that is submitted over to the prosecutor.
Yeah, so you spend on an average arrest 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour?
It could be an hour or 2 hours depending on the arrest.
Just to get the paperwork proper, ready for the prosecutor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's on top of that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, when you started out on the police department, I think you had 2 men in a car, didn't you?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes we would have 2 men to a car.
Yeah, I remember back when we had that. And so whenever you went into a tough situation, you had a partner with you.
Yes.
How long has it been since we've been able to have 2 men in a car?
I would guess probably 10 years at least.
Good. Now, and I'm not going to tell all the criminals out there how we police the town, but we're going to talk a little bit about it. So you're watching an area, and you're an area because you're the captain. You're on whatever comes in. They check with you how you want to handle it. I know how that works because I listen to you. Okay. But many times you have to go make that call by yourself because you're in the area, you're next to whatever's going on. So you head out and you call for help.
Correct. If that helps, if there's somebody available, we're working with 3 guys on 3rd shift most of the time.
And so it's tough. And we're in 3 areas of the town trying to watch the north, south, and east. And you got to do that by yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't know, the chief and I went to Indianapolis about a month ago, and we took a little lesson on how you approach the car and all this, and the state's going to come down here and work with our people because that's all changed. But, in the middle of the night when it's dark and you're on a street that doesn't have any lights or an alley, and you got to approach the car, tell us some of the things you're looking for when you approach that car.
The first thing you're looking for is how many people's in the car, your surroundings around you, because you're in a dark, unlit area, so you're wanting to know what's going on there. As you approach the car, you start looking for signs or indicators. Most traffic stops are normal traffic stops. Nothing goes along. You have an interaction with the driver. You run their driver's license, their registration, and they move on their way. But there's times where you have multiple people in the car and you're the only person there, and until you get back up, sometimes you just maintain and stop things until you get people there because you don't know. We live in a tougher society than we did 20 years ago.
Rough. We live in a tougher society than we did 10 years ago.
Yes, sir.
I know how tough it is. Okay, when Chief and I went up and took this course, I didn't know, but you prefer, when you stop a car, for the driver to keep his hands on the wheel when you're walking up. That's what they told us.
Yes, that's what your training stops training.
Yeah, you're not supposed to start reaching to your wallet because that's a bad sign. You could be reaching for a gun.
Right.
They told us while we were up there that you shouldn't go over into the glove compartment and look for your registration or your insurance card until the officer tells you to, and then he watches you do it with one hand.
Correct.
All those things I never even thought about, but that's safety for you, isn't it?
Correct. It's safety for us, and it's safety for the driver too, because we know what's going on. We know where their movements are. It makes them feel safe too, because they feel like they are doing what they're supposed to, and we're doing what we're supposed to.
And you're not supposed to get out of your car when you're stopped. You're supposed to sit in your car with your hands on the wheel.
Correct. Just sit there, maintain your position where you're at, and do what the officer says. When he asks for something, then that's when you go for it, your license or your registration. And it's good indicators for the driver. If their registration's in their glove box, it's good for the driver to say, my registration is in my glove box. I'm going to get that out of my glove box. If you do ever get pulled over and you have a gun in your car, it's good to let the officer know, hey, I have a gun in my car, but I do carry a concealed weapons permit. I just want you to know that. It doesn't make us nervous that there's a gun in the car. It just makes us feel like we're getting great cooperation from the driver. So it comforts us a little bit there too.
Mm-hmm. I can understand that. Okay. Now, when you're out on the scene now and you find out there's a warrant for this guy in Wayne County, and how do you handle that when you're by yourself?
You do it the best you can. We go through training of what we call verbal judo, where we learn to talk to people and look for signs and clues and stuff. And sometimes you try to joke with them, cut up, relax them a little bit so they feel comfortable and stuff. And just, the best way you can talk to them to make the situation go safely for him and you.
Okay. And then you have to have the car towed. People say, well, why do you tow people's cars? Because they've violated something and they can't continue to drive it, right?
Correct. Yes, and it's one of our policies, our SOPs, that you tow the vehicle due to the fact that you leave that vehicle sitting on the side of the road or something like that, and something happens to it, and that could come back towards us saying that you didn't maintain or take care of my property or anything. So this way we know where it's at. It's in a safe, locked up, controlled area.
You've taken, over the years, you have to take continuing education every year.
Yes, sir.
And some of that you're able to put on yourself, aren't you? Don't you do some training with the officers?
Yes, I'm a certified generalist instructor through the state, and I'm also a taser instructor.
Okay. Well, while we're talking about that taser, can you get it out?
I don't have it with me today,
Oh, you don't
sir.
have it with you?
No.
Okay. Tell us, just recently we went to each officer carrying a taser. Fayette County Foundation helped us, and we took some riverboat money, and we got that done. Explain why the taser is such a great tool for a police officer.
Well, the taser gives the officer another tool in his arsenal or his belt to de-escalate a situation. It gives us another tool also to not have to go directly to possibly deadly force where we have to pull our weapon out. The taser is what they call an incapacitating weapon. It incapacitates the subject or the person for a period of time so the officer can gain control and make the arrest or cuff them up or whatever. Incidents all over the country, when departments went to tasers, their use of force incidents went way down. Just because I myself, I've been shot with the taser. I took a shot from it, so I know what it would feel like and what it was done, and it's nothing that you want to fight through. So it's a good tool. Since we've deployed them out on the street in February, no officers had to use their taser, but it has de-escalated a lot of situations. I've heard several officers say, hey, I got my taser out. As soon as the subject saw me get it out, it stopped.
That's why we did it.
Yes, sir.
That's exactly
yes,
what we
it
did.
keeps injuries down on both sides. No officers are getting hurt. Suspects aren't getting hurt because you're not having to go hand-on fighting with them. Maybe using OC spray or a baton or something. It stops the situation really quick.
Yeah. Well, Chief Counselor will call me every once in a while, maybe at midnight or sometime. He'll say, we've had to call the SWAT team out. He calls me because he knows that's going to cost some overtime, and I approve it. He knows that I approve it anyway. But when he does call that SWAT team out, sitting on the table in front of these two police officers is the gear that they would carry to be on a SWAT team. First of all, a SWAT team's not a team that takes a fly swatter and swats flies. Tell us what a SWAT team is.
Me?
Go ahead. You're the oldest guy here.
Yeah, I'm one of the originators of the SWAT team, and I've held several positions on the team, and I was a team leader for like 6 years. We get called out into serious situations where there is a possibility of someone being heavily armed or a situation where a negotiator might have to come in and we have to secure the premises. It's used for a lot of different reasons. SWAT teams are also for felony warrants, serious felony warrants, especially when it comes to the possible suspect that we're going to get is heavily armed with some type of weapons. And so it's safer to get a SWAT team together than just several officers that don't have the special equipment and sometimes tactics, as they call SWAT, special weapons and tactics, to handle situations. Because not that a SWAT team officer is any better than any other officer, they've just had the training that they need and to effect an arrest on a critical situation. So we do have a lot of officers, even regular officers, carry similar weapons to what we got here on the table, patrol rifles, for instance, and they would be in a situation assisting a SWAT team with suppressed fire if need be. But most of the SWAT weapons are more shorter, and they got different kind of attachments of various sights or lights on the weapon, stuff like this, mainly to move around in buildings a little easier through doorways other than a long rifle of any type. There are submachine guns, so to speak, some fully automatic, some semi-automatic, we don't very seldom use fully automatic weapons. That's usually for suppressed fire. It's usually just semi-automatic. But we have different things like on the table here. We've got.
When would you pick up each one of those pieces there?
Robbie is on the SWAT team.
And pick it up and explain what it is, because the people I know, when we talk about SWAT, they don't realize what you have to carry. They carry all this stuff here.
This is all the gear that I wear. This is my leg holster, straps on the side of my leg. I'm the point entry man, so I'm the first guy in the door. So I always make sure I wear knee pads because I might have to go down or whatever to protect the guy behind me or go through the door. This is a gas mask. All the officers have one for in case we have to deploy gas or anything into a house.
All this you're carrying when you go in?
Yes, sir. This is all on my body. This is what they call balaclava. This goes over your face and it hides your face and it kind of protects your face. That way when you go into a house, if there's any debris flying or anything, because we'll sometimes use percussion grenades or flashbangs, things like that, or we may have to blow a door open or something. It just depends, and this kind of protects you a little bit. These are entry gloves, and they're padded, so you don't bang your knuckles up when you're going through doorways and stuff like that. It protects your knuckles. This is the ballistic helmet that we wear. Protect your head. That way it protects you. It's solid. It'll take a round. This is goggles. Being the point entry man, I'm right up front, so whenever we do use a flash grenade or something like that, I've had drywall, things like that blow back in my face, so I try to protect my eyes. And this is the entry vest that we use.
Notice how when you pick that up, just what does that add to your weight?
The vest alone is around 35 pounds. It has a steel plate on the inside, just like the military has, and it'll actually take a 7.62 round. And that's not counting all these patches or pouches on here. I carry extra magazines, handcuff cases, magazines for my Glock that I carry on my side. I'll carry some pepper spray in there just so we have that. And then now, since we have the tasers, some of the guys have been putting the tasers on their SWAT outfit, so that gives us another weapon so we don't have to deploy possibly deadly force, and we can use that too. So once you put everything on, you're probably looking, besides I carry a H&K MP5 9mm, which is my long gun that I carry. So with everything on, I'm probably looking at around another 65 to 70 pounds that I'm carrying. And it depends on how long you may be out for, 7-8 hours, depending on if you get a barricaded subject or a situation where we go out and serve multiple warrants, you may be out most of the day. So that's what you're lugging around for the day.
Now, I know some of you are sitting out there and say, oh, they don't have to do that in Connersville. That would never come out. Well, I can tell you the chief calls me or tells me in advance when they got to make an entry. And it's pretty regular, let me tell you. When you see those drug raids that are on the front page of the paper, when they go in, they take a ram and they break the door down, they go in. Sometimes there might be 20, 30 guns inside that place where they go. And they go in there and risk their life to arrest those people to get them out of there. And it happens on a pretty regular basis. As he said, we got a great community, but every community's got a segment of people that commit crime. And that's what these guys in the blue have to keep us safe from. And they don't want to kill people. They don't want to injure people. They want to get those people corralled and in jail and keep us safe during the night. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I forget where it was, and I think it was up at the 911 service, and I said, we have timed our first aid unit, we've timed our police department. Normally, you can have a police officer, if they're not all tied up, you can have one in about 3 minutes inside the city. You can have a fire truck, or you can have the first aid unit. Now, when you're operating with 3 and they're out on a call and they're cuffing somebody and they're doing this with somebody, and naturally, if they get a dog call, there's a dog barking up on 12th Street, they're not going to leave that to go to a dog call. And so it's going to take a while. It may be a half hour, or maybe when you talk to the lady on the phone at dispatch, she might say, all of our officers are tied up. We'll get one up there as quick as we can. And you got to be patient. And I think you go to your calls according to the severity of the call, don't you?
Yes, sir. If we're backlogged, we prioritize our calls.
Okay, so it does happen in Connersville. It happens in every city, and you have to have this equipment in order to keep the police officers safe. And I've watched them, and I've seen them come in at night, and there's no way in the world I'd consider doing that for a living. But these people do it because they like what they do and they're dedicated to what they do. You work 40 hours a week, or do you work more than 40? I forget.
40 hours a week is a standard week. It just depends on if I have extra things to do, since I'm the head training instructor, so there's sometimes I have to get things together or do extra stuff.
So will you continue to, maybe it's not a fair question, to be a police officer? Or do you have in mind going to a second career eventually, or is it a young man's job? Or
I haven't decided that yet.
Okay.
I love my job. I love the people I work with. I enjoy this community, the people in this community. I came back after being out of college and working out of town, I came back here because I love this community. I haven't made a decision. It's something that me and my wife will have to sit down and talk about. I would love to stay, but,
Do you have children?
Yes, sir.
How many children do you?
2 children.
And how old are they?
My oldest is in college, and my youngest is a freshman in high school.
Okay. When you go to work, do they fear for you? Does your wife able to sleep when you're gone at night?
Yes, they can. And
They're used to it, you think?
They're used to it, and I think a lot of it is they know that I work with a good group of guys that aren't going to leave me out by myself, and they're going to be there. And none of us know when we leave for work or leave home if we're coming home. I mean, there's no plan for us that day. It just, we're in a more higher risk situation, but.
Last week we had a police officer injured, and we had a fireman injured, all in the same week. Mm-hmm. Both of them had to be taken to the hospital. And there's a lot of other things you do besides stop cars, SWAT team, and drugs. You help when someone can't find their missing child.
Correct.
That happens. Sometimes the child just wanders off. Or I hear on the radio sometimes someone, just older person, just walks away from a nursing home, and then you have to handle that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we handle multiple different types of calls.
Lots of things.
Yes.
And then, what was it, a week or two ago, we had the guy from Michigan thought he was going to come down here and get away with something, and that was touchy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the schools were shut down. Chief, I know you've been commended, and you and your officers have been commended on the way that was handled. All the schools were locked down, and
That was last week, a week from today.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that, how that worked out.
Well,
you had training in that, all of your officers did, and you knew what to do, right?
Yeah, basically, we had this guy was an escaped fugitive, and it wasn't an escape from law enforcement. It was from a bond company. When people bail out of jail, what people don't realize when they bail out of jail, they're out of jail for them, like the county, but their bond company who bonded them out become their jailer, and they are to given a court date to appear. And if they don't appear and they skip bond, then that bond, whatever it may be, $10, $20, $100,000, whatever, is money lost to that bond company. So when somebody skips bond, they send agents, what they call bonding agents, or recovery agents is another word for them, bond runners or bounty hunters, because they get 10% of the bond when they bring them back. And they're covered under an old federal law from the cowboy days back in the 1800s, late 1800s, in regard to the bounty hunting laws, and they really haven't changed much since then. So they can do things that police officers can't do because, like I said, that bond company becomes their jailer. So if they get a tip that he's hiding somewhere, or she, or whoever it may be, and they find out where they are, they don't need to knock and announce. They don't have to worry about Miranda. They don't have to worry about none of these rules to arrest, the rules of thumb of arrest by police officers. They can just barge in and take custody of you. And if you resist, then there's nobody going to be there to charge battery charges on you. And it's kind of a sketchy job because they can get in trouble, but since it's a federal law and it's been in effect for many years, they'll eventually probably slide from it or get out of it, depending on how they went about it. So what happened was we had these bond agents down here looking for a gentleman that they've been looking for almost 2 years. He skipped bond in December of 2013, and on some it was a DUI, and I believe it was causing death. And they've been looking for him, but meanwhile he got in some more trouble in regards to identity thefts and illegal purchases of property like trucks and trailers and guns, and which kind of drove the ATF into this. But anyway, they located him here in Connersville. He's been living here for a year and a half on and off. And long story short, they went to, when these bond agents come into town, we'll go and usually stand by. We don't help them, so per se. We don't go in up there to the door with them. We'll sit back and we'll be present. But they go do their thing because they're serving a bond warrant. It's not a warrant issued by our courts, or it's not an extradition warrant or from another state. They have a different type of warrant that they can get this guy or gal. And when they went up there, their tactics are similar, but not always like the police. So what happens is when they went up there, knocked on the door, the guy bails out the back of the door and runs down in the woods, and he's possibly armed. And a whole bunch of guns, well, it was like 12 of them, I believe it was, of high-powered rifles, pistols, shotguns, were given up by a property owner, so to speak, that were in the house that belonged to him, but he was believed to be carrying some type of handgun. So now we got a situation. We got a guy that knows he's going to go back to prison or jail, and this guy had been in prison before, so he was a felon in the past. And so what happens is this is where we have to get involved. We got 2 schools in the immediate area. We got a lot of houses and people getting up and going to school or going to work and in and out of their houses. And so that's when we had to lock down some schools and call some police officers in. Of course, our drug task force was coming into work and everything else. And so basically, the city police, Fayette County Sheriff's Department, Indiana State Police, conservation officers, NATF, they eventually got down there. We all pooled together. We set up a command post in front of the house where this whole thing started, and we assigned different cars out to different areas out like on the Memorial Bypass. and in the neighborhoods, and we got our dogs out there to try to track this individual. And so we had everything in motion. Channel 13. I know the reporter. In fact, he's from Connersville. He calls me while this stuff is going down, and I tell him I didn't have a chance to talk to him right then. I call him right back, and we did make a search of the house when this whole thing started, and it was clean. And so as time went on, myself and another officer, one of my dog handlers, we were discussing over the telephone some situations, and I think we were giving the guy too much credit because we were out searching, and he should have turned up somewhere. The dog should have hung on a scent and everything else, and so we decided to come back to square one where this whole thing started at, and we requested another search of the house, and this time with the dog, and so we went inside, and a lady gave us permission to search again. And so, long story short, he was located when the lady wanted to take her family dogs out into the garage. And her son, who was very helpful in this whole thing, went out there, and I went out there. And earlier, that garage door was open. It was left open for a reason, and all of a sudden, I noticed it went down for some reason, and that's when we started getting a little suspicious. So the dogs and a couple other officers were searching the house while I'm out in the garage with the lady of the house and her son and her family dogs. She had 3 house dogs. And one of the house dogs went over to a workbench on the wall and was digging up underneath the workbench with its tail wagging. And so I flipped on a light, and I saw some knuckles hanging onto a 2x4 that was a support for the bench, at which time I observed a subject underneath there, and at which time he was apprehended and placed into custody. And so
He could have just about shot you from underneath the bench.
he could have. And I've been in situations like that before where, when you go up to a car, for instance, what Captain Fee was saying a few minutes ago, he's evaluating the situation, the guy sitting in the front seat of a car. You know what your intentions are going to be, you know what you're going to do, and you're going to react to whatever happens as you're evaluating the situation, but you don't know if he's got a gun, like right here next to him. When you walk up, he pulls the trigger. You don't know. That's why we want the hands on the wheel. So I've been in situations like that where a guy could have got me before I saw him. And so he was apprehended, and he was unarmed. And so he was apprehended, and with the lady of the house, I believe he did leave for a while. And the thing is he came back. The problem was I was out front running the command post, and every available officer I had was out searching in vehicles and on foot. And I would go walk back there occasionally and look around, but I think I did that twice. But there's no way I could run the show up on the street and also keep a watch on the back of the house. And that's one reason the garage door was open, so I could see the back door of there and a window and give me some kind of vision. But when the garage door went down and all this, we regrouped, and we felt we had a gut feeling that something was going on here.
Well, you just don't realize that this could have been really tragic. Say the guy did take guns, and he had 12 of them in the house, and he went to the school and took somebody hostage or just shot people. It could have been really, really bad. And as Joey Laughlin described, it went off like clockwork. It was handled in such a great, you locked down the schools immediately to protect the people. That was your first chore. That was done. So all the kids were in there, locked in, safe, nobody could get in. And I think there was a police officer or a deputy inside with them. I think they were in there 2-3 hours. They were locked up in there. That was a little uncomfortable for them, but that's the way it had to be to keep them safe. And these little situations can turn bad in a hurry. And so I think it was a good lesson, and it certainly was a good, not a good thing, but we learned a lot from it. You did, yeah, all of you. But Joey said it was just handled very properly. I think the school corporation agrees with that. We'll get back to where we first started here when we started at 7 o'clock. And the reason I wanted to bring police and fire on here tonight, I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want anybody to think that you're unsafe, because you're not. But we've had to cut our budget. When I took office, it was $13,716,000. I'm looking at a budget to present to the council next Monday night, about 12,600,000+, which is about $960,000 less than it was 8 years ago. And I'm telling you this because I'm saying we have to run the police department and the fire department, the first aid unit, part of the park, part of the street department, with that money that comes in on your property tax, which I explained to you when we first started why it is so short compared to what it was 8 years ago. No doing of the city council, no doing of the mayor. It's all because of what happened. Tax caps, loss of Istion and other industries. Assessed value going down. That's what's happened to us. I proposed 2 or 3 times in the last several years to the city council that we consider a safety tax. We are allowed to initiate a public safety tax, which would go directly to police and fire to help fund those. We really need at least 3 more policemen than we have. We could do this. I've asked the state, many mayors have asked the state, in order to have a public safety tax, you have to have both the Lloyd and the Coit tax. We could drop one of those taxes, because one of those taxes, all it does, it gives property tax relief. We don't need property tax relief. We already have it with the caps. But in order to have the public safety tax, the state of Indiana says you must have both other taxes. Our city council, and rightfully so, are reluctant to put that safety tax on, because it would add probably 1.5% to a 3% tax that's already on there with those other 2. I would like for you, when you talk to your state representatives, Cindy Zimke, or you talk to your state senator, Lysing, make them aware that we would like to drop that tax that we don't really need and move it over to a public safety tax of 1.5%. We wouldn't pay 1 penny more than we're paying now, but we could fund police and fire in Connersville, Indiana, in Greensburg, Indiana, and Shelbyville, if we could get that done. But when they're holding us hostage to the 3% already on the books, nobody wants to put another 1.5% on in these times when we're all having trouble just making things go. And so I thought, if I bring the police and the fire on here and show you what they have to do, show you what they're up against, you might consider talking to your state representative or your state senator. You might consider talking to your city council member and see if we can do this. Probably can't be done in my time, but I'm hoping that the new city council and the new mayor will be able to get something going so you won't have to worry. We can't afford overtime, and just in this case, had we not caught that individual, and maybe Robbie's shift would have had to stay over, half the time they just work comp time, and we don't have the money to comp time. Comp time means when we do have enough officers, they can take an extra day off. We never get to that point where we have enough where they can take it off. How much comp time you got built up, Robbie?
I currently have around 25 days plus around 15 personal days that I have built up that I can't use.
You can't get it because you have nobody in there to take your place so you can take it.
It's very seldom can a guy use it. So it's minimal.
So that's not fair. How would you like to go in there and work a shift? Well, you get comp time. Well, when can I use it? Well, in 2020 maybe you can take a day. So it's very important that we look at this. And it wouldn't cost the citizens 1 penny more if we could talk the state into dropping that other tax. I wish that the fire chief could have been here tonight because they have the same problem. They carry all that gear into a fire, and they're up there on 7th Street right now fighting a fire. They have the same problem. We can't pay any overtime. We can't pay if they have to stay over on a shift. We can't pay for it because we just don't have the money. Well, that's the reason there is a thing called the public safety tax. Most of you will remember that in the paper the last few weeks, you guys remember, Brookville has wrestled with this public safety tax. The county has wrestled with putting it in for the sheriff's department, which the sheriff's department would get a part of this tax if we get it. I don't know, did it pass? Does anyone know? They've been arguing, I've been reading, they were about to pass it and then didn't, and I don't know what they did or didn't. But it's a very important thing in this stage in our life in Connersville, Indiana, to try to get this to where we can fund it. Most all of the police and the fire, with very, very few exceptions, have not had an increase in pay in 8 years. I think maybe, I don't know, Robbie, am I saying that right? I mean, has anyone had an increase in pay?
I don't think we've had a raise. I can't state 100% that it's been 8 years, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. It's 7 of the last 8 or something like that, or 8 of the last 9. We've only had one raise in that time frame.
And things became more expensive. We have been able to, because of the riverboat fund, we get a little bit of riverboat money. We just got it in August. We get that money, and you probably hear the city council talk about that riverboat money, and it's set up to buy equipment. So we have been able to keep up with our equipment pretty good. We've bought used police cars from out, we're Iowa, Chief?
Iowa, yes.
And we've been buying 3, 4, 5 of those used cars with 60, 70,000 miles on them, 80, and then we run them up to about 150. And I listened to the officers call in today, and most of them are around 100, 121. What's your car got, Robbie?
Mine's around 80,000. Mine's one of the 06s, though. They were ones we've had a little while.
Okay.
But since we went to the take-home program, the miles drop. I mean, I'm lucky if I put maybe 10,000 miles a year on my car. So you take a car, you drive it for 10 to 12 years, you're looking at 100,000 to 120,000 miles is all you're going to put on it and everything. So it's helped.
Let's talk about that. I get criticized, and I know you guys do, because we have a take-home car problem. I put that in effect when I took over as mayor. I got tired of seeing those 20, 25 cars sitting in the parking lot where people could break the antennas off or steal stuff out of them. And I said, each officer take their car home and take care of it and be their car. They don't abuse it. They don't take it to the grocery store. They don't take it to the movie. They take it home, park it in front of their house. And my goal is, that means there's 25 cars parked around Connersville, policing every neighborhood. What do you think about that, Robbie?
I think it's a very beneficial program. Like I said, I drive mine to and from work, to and from training if I have training, and to and from court. That's the only time mine leaves my house. My neighbors enjoy it, being in the neighborhood. They like that because they think it helps deter some crime in the neighborhood. It may just be parked there, but people know that it's there. It's convenient because all this gear that you see here, I keep in the trunk of my police car. So when I go on duty, I have everything I need for that night. I don't have to.
And if you're called in at 2 o'clock in the morning, you got it with you.
Yeah, I called in, got it with me. As it was before, you had to come down, find a car, load all your bags up in the car. It wasted half hour, 30 minutes, 40 minutes or whatever of time that we could be out patrolling on the streets or driving around. And then at the end of the shift, you have to do the same thing. Take everything out, pack it all back up in your own personal car, do all that. So there's another half hour that you've lost. You lost an hour of street time that we can come in, sign in, be right out on the road. I think the general public is the most, from what I talk, they
understand
like
it now.
They understand it, but I understand some people don't. I mean, and I don't know. I'm a police officer. It's not that it's something free to me because I don't use it. I don't want to drive it around town every day on my day off. I don't want that.
Yeah. I think it's done well, and it helps police the town, and it gives the officer a responsibility toward his car. If there's something wrong with it, he knows it. He can have Phil over at the garage fix it or whatever, and he knows where it happened, how it happened, and why it happened. And it works. And I've been proud of the chief because he takes the junkiest car in the fleet.
I got the oldest car in the fleet. I got it issued to me in 2002 and still
You're
driving
still driving it.
It's rusted out and everything, but
Well, that's good.
it's old like me.
Yeah, and I've been proud of our chief because he goes out the other morning. He made a traffic stop on the way to work. A lot of chiefs they don't police. They don't make traffic stops. They don't look out for grass. They don't go out and help people. They don't go out and look for criminals. And both of our chiefs are working chiefs. And Dennis tonight is with his mother-in-law. She's been real sick, and he's with the family tonight. I think they transferred to Indianapolis, and so he wasn't able to be with us tonight. He's our assistant chief, and you got to have somebody in charge. And in the police department's case, you got to have someone in charge 24 hours a day. That's why we have 3 captains and we have 2 chiefs, and because they can't always be there. I was hoping maybe we'd get some questions, but the paper didn't advertise we were even doing this, so I don't think people know. But over the next month, a lot of people watch this program, and I'm hoping they'll understand a little better how things work. We got just a couple of minutes. I want you to give me a kind of a closing statement, what you think, Robbie, we should do or doing wrong or right or whatever.
I don't think the community's doing anything wrong as a whole. Like I said before, we have a great core of people that live in this community. I just think that we need to work a little bit harder on certain areas, certain things, and put a little bit more effort out there as a community as a whole.
Chief?
I think the community's doing well. We have several neighborhood watch programs, and they help out also in just if you see something strange and suspicious, report it. And sometimes, and most of the time, it's nothing, but sometimes it is something. So we need to do that. We just need to stick with reporting things to us when they happen. Don't call me like the next day and tell me something that happened the night before. They should have called the police in. And we have a lot of that. They had a prowler last night, or somebody's been messing around. Well, call us when you think it's going on. You heard noises last night. You should call when it's happening, not call me the next day. And it's frustrating. And they need to get that through their heads that they need to call the police when it's going down, not the next day. And just don't be afraid to call the police. That's what we're getting paid for. That's why you pay us, and you're on your tax dollars and stuff to come out here and do what we do. And so please call. And that goes along with when you see properties and stuff. And also I want to say, have a little patience, because every time we have a storm, that lights on A Street and Western and East Western, they mess up. And as soon as I get a chance, I go over and I resync them and everything. And it gets frustrating sometimes, I know, for a lot of people. And so, we do what we can. I take care of all the lights in town too, along with the yards and everything. So it just, anything we do, we try to do what's best for the public and for the people, and we want to help. So my advice is call us when you need us and report anything that might be suspicious.
Okay, next month we're going to have the senior citizens on. Fran's going to chair the program. Fran does an excellent job. And he's going to have the Senior Citizens Program on here. And it is a very wonderful program in Connersville, all the way from the meals to the thrift shop, all the things they do. They'll be on here next month. That'll be for October. And then I'm going to give you a little sneak preview. He's going to have the basketball coach and maybe a couple others on here in November. And he does the basketball program. And the basketball coach will tell us all about that big game the Tuesday night before Thanksgiving. So we got some big things, and then I'll be back to do the Christmas show with Santa Claus, and that's always a big time. Well, tonight we've had the police, and thank you so much for being with us, and I hope we've made some sense, and it's good to be here. Thank you and good night.